Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're venturing deep into a time when chocolate wasn't just a sweet treat. It was sacred. You're not unwrapping a candy bar tonight. You're stepping into the dense, humming jungle of the ancient Aztec world, where the air smells like wet leaves smoldering earth and the faint bitterness of something magical cacao. Giant green pods hang heavy from trees like sleepy lanterns, and as you trudge barefoot across the forest floor, your fingers brush against their waxy skin. You pluck one warm from the sun and feel its gentle weight. Inside, the seeds of serenity, and maybe the seeds of war. You probably won't survive this world barefoot and cacao-stained, but at least you'll go out tasting something divine. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You grip the obsidian blade with care. Not because it's sharp, though it is, but because the jungle doesn't like sudden movements. You ease the edge across the stem of the cacao pod, and it drops into your palm with a hushed thunk. There's something ancient in that sound. Not old, like your grandma's attic old, but earth was still cooling kind of old. You sling the first pod into a woven basket strapped to your back and move on, brushing past a wide mossy ceiba tree that legends say connects this world to the next. It seems fair. If anything could be divine enough to link the realms, it's this fruit. Aztecs believed cacao was a gift from Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of learning wind and all things clever. Some say he stole it from paradise and handed it to humanity out of pity or defiance, depending on the storyteller's mood. You'd thank him if he ever dropped by. Right now, you've got sweat trailing down your spine and the sun humming just above your head. You could use some shade or some chocolate. But this is the first step. You're not just collecting a crop, you're gathering essence. Each pod is a capsule of potential for energy, for ritual, for peace. The beans inside, when treated just right, sing back to you in foam and spice and warm sleepiness. You reach for another pod, this one darker, more mature. Experienced. Probably knows more than you do. There's a rhythm to this. Move, reach, slice, gather. The jungle, for all its chaos, has a lullaby woven into its roots. The birds call sure, but they're half-hearted in this heat. Even the monkeys seem to whisper. You pause to watch one eye you from a high branch holding a stolen fruit like it's contraband. You nod at each other in solidarity. Sticky fingers club. The Aztecs didn't just stumble on cacao, they revered it. Cacao wasn't a luxury, it was life. Currency, sacrament. An early Spanish account notes that one cacao bean could buy a tamale. 100, you were in cloak territory. And yet, for something so valuable, the process of obtaining it was gentle. No frantic harvesting here. You pick each pod like you're handling a sleeping baby jaguar, calmly, respectfully, maybe with a little awe. Historians still argue whether cacao originated in the lowland rainforests of what's now southern Mexico, or whether it was first cultivated by the Olmecs even earlier. Either way, by the time it's in your hands, it's wrapped in stories, customs, and an earthy sweetness you can't quite define. You sling your full basket down with a soft grunt, squatting on your haunches in a sunlit clearing. You take a moment listening to the wind shift through banana leaves and the buzz of some insect doing its 9 to 5. This is where the real magic starts. Not in the temple. Not in the market. Here, with sticky forearms and the soft thunk of cacao meeting earth. You crack open a pod to peek inside. Thick white pulp clings to dark seeds like custard over pebbles. It smells like lychee and clean sugar and something faintly floral. It's good. Too good. You suck a bit of the pulp off a seed and spit it out. You're not here for the sweet coat. You're here for what lies beneath. A fringe theory says the cacao bean's first use wasn't for drinks at all, but for fermentation into an early form of chocolate beer. Imagine that sipping bitter bubbles under the same trees that shade you now centuries ago. That batch probably tasted like vinegar and forest floor, but hey, innovation starts somewhere. You tie off the basket and hoist it over your shoulder again, muscles protesting slightly, but your mind starting to drift. Already the rhythm of the jungle is pulling you under like a hammock, rocking you slow. Each step squishes slightly in the loam, but even your footsteps are quieter now. By the time you reach the village, the sky has dipped into warm gold, and the air smells of firewood and crushed herbs. Your fingers are stained with pulp, and the day's efforts, but your heart's lighter. You don't rush. You can't rush cacao. It grows slow. It teaches slow. You're just along for the lull. Tonight, you'll start the next stage. You'll coax the bitterness out. But for now, you stretch your back, roll your shoulders, and place the pods in the shaded storage pit beneath the hut. They'll sweat there for a few days, covered in banana leaves, and thick quiet. Let them rest. You've earned that too. You wake up before the sun the way your ancestors probably did when cacao meant more than breakfast. The village is still asleep, wrapped in the soft snore of dawn insects and the lazy crackle of leftover embers. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders and slip outside, the air cool and damp against your skin. It's not cold, exactly, just the kind of weather that reminds you you're alive and not just floating through dreams of frothy cacao drinks. Your footsteps are hushed as you walk to the storage pit where yesterday's harvest waits. You peel back the thick banana leaves that have been swaddling the pods like sleepy infants. A soft, fermented sweetness drifts up, earthy and sour in a way that suggests something important is happening. This is where bitterness begins to leave the building. You sit down on a low stool carved from a tree stump blade in hand and crack open the first pod with a dry pop. The beans inside are slick, purple-brown, still wrapped in a translucent sheath of pulp. You scoop them out with your fingers, plop them into a shallow clay bowl, and move on to the next pod. Crack, scoop, plop. Over and over in a rhythm so soothing, you wonder if this is the true origin of Aztec music. The smell deepens with every opened pod. It's oddly relaxing, like compost, but fancier. This fermentation phase is essential. It brings out the compounds that make cacao chocolatey, coaxing the bitterness down and the complexity up. You don't have thermometers or timers. You have instinct, color, scent, texture, and possibly a bird that chirps wildly when the beans are ready, though that might just be gossip. Once the bowl is full, you dump the beans into a wooden trough lined with palm leaves. You cover them again and let the fermentation continue, trusting the jungle's ambient heat to do its thing. Each batch needs several days of this, and while it's tempting to poke and stir, you don't. This isn't a soup, it's a transformation. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs perfected fermentation or just inherited it from earlier Mesoamerican cultures like the Maya or the Olmecs. Some say the Aztecs treated cacao more as a prestige product than a farmer's crop. Others insist the details, the slow peel, the layer of banana leaf, the precise timing point to a deeply hands-on process. Either way, you're part of it now, one careful scoop at a time. You take a break and stretch your legs walking through the village where smoke now curls from a few cooking fires. A neighbor waves, holding a pot of maize porridge. You wave back and make a note to ask later if she wants to trade some for a handful of roasted beans. No rush. Cacao waits, and so do you. Back at the pit, you prepare for the next task, turning the fermented beans. Using a flat wooden paddle, you lift and gently flip them, giving air to the layers below. This part smells challenging, like overripe fruit and wet socks that got too philosophical. But your hands move calmly. You're not grossed out. You're grounded. You know that inside these sour bundles lies the base for something people will one day crave across oceans, a fun fringe detail. Some early cacao workers apparently used their feet to mash and flip the beans. It was faster. It was earthy and arguably exfoliating. You're not sure whether to cringe or call it ancient multitasking. You opt for the paddle method. Your dignity thanks you. As you finish turning the last batch, you notice a small sprout poking up from the dirt nearby. A cacao tree seedling. You kneel down and run your fingers along its velvety leaves, marveling at the audacity of this little thing trying to become a future pod in a world that may or may not have time for it. You think about planting it properly later, maybe naming it. Something dignified, like Benjamin. You chuckle quietly at your own joke, yes, out loud, and head toward the drying rack. The beans that finished fermenting yesterday now wait for the sun. You carry them out in wide, shallow trays made of woven palm. As you spread them out evenly, the smell changes again. The sourness gives way to something darker, more roasted. Not yet chocolate, but headed that way. Drying cacao beans is both science and ritual. You need sunlight, but not too much. Heat, but not burning. You sit nearby as the beans begin their slow bake under the open sky, occasionally flipping them by hand to make sure they dry evenly. You hum as you work, not a tune, really, just a sound that keeps the pace. Even the birds seem to join in offering background vocals that are either enthusiastic or deeply offended. And here's your historical fact, snack of the hour. The Aztecs didn't just use dried cacao beans for drinking, they also used them as currency. A market day could involve actual bean counting, where everything from a gourd of maize to a rabbit. Yep. Even live animals had a cacao price tag. You imagine haggling with a smug vendor over whether your beans are too dusty or premium grade. The nerve. As the sun arcs higher, the beans darken and begin to harden. You lift a few, rolling them between your fingers. They feel lighter, now more certain. Like they know what they're becoming. You let them rest longer, turning them again just once more before heading inside for water and shade. This day is long, but it's not tiring. Each task is small, intentional slow, the kind of slowness that's becoming rare in the modern world. But here, every step means something. Each bean goes through a miniature hero's journey, plucked from a pod fermented in shadow, dried by the sun. Not all survive, but the ones that do. They're worth the wait. As the sky starts to soften into amber, you check the drying rack one more time. A few beans clink lightly against the tray, your signal that they're ready. You gather them into a cloth bag, tie it off, and sling it over your shoulder. The beans are still warm like pocket stones or tiny hearts. Tonight, you'll roast them. But for now, you sit by the fire legs, stretched out bag beside you, and let the smoke wrap around your shoulders like a sleepy serpent. The hard part is over. The calm part is just beginning. The fire crackles softly, like it knows its role in tonight's gentle ritual. You sit cross-legged on a smooth stone just beyond the ring of heat, watching the flames dance as shadows flicker across your face. The cloth bag of dried beans rests in your lap, its contents rattling faintly each time you shift. They've been through fermentation and sunlight. Now comes the roast, the part where bitterness deepens into richness, and the aroma teases at what's to come. Roasting isn't done in a hurry. This isn't a microwave job. This is stone fire and patience. You unfold a flat clay griddle called a comel, placing it carefully over a bed of coals. The fire here is low and steady like a heartbeat after meditation. You test the surface heat with your palm held just above it, hot but not scorching. Perfect. You pour a handful of beans onto the comel, and they skitter across the surface with a muted patter like seeds escaping a whisper. The air fills with the first real hint of chocolate. Not the candy shop smell, this is earthier, smokier, a little wilder. It's like the scent of someone who knows how to build a fire and make eye contact at the same time. As the beans roast, you keep them moving with a smooth, circular motion of a flat wooden paddle. No sharp jabs, no frantic tossing, just a slow swirl like stirring dreams. Every few minutes, one pops with a dry snap, the shell cracking from the heat. You smile. It's working. They're opening up, shedding their husks, offering their core to the process. Historians still argue whether Aztec roasting techniques varied depending on social class, were the high priests getting a slow ceremonial roast, while the market vendors tossed theirs on hotter flames to save time. You figure the gods would appreciate a medium roast with spiritual undertones and a strong finish. The smell deepens. It's hypnotic. Smoky sweet with a tinge of bitterness like a lullaby written in minor key. You lean closer, letting it wrap around you, nose tingling. You could bottle this scent and call it Eau de Empire. Now, here's a fringe tidbit. You probably didn't expect some Aztec families believed cacao roasting should be done during certain moon phases. Not because it altered the flavor, but because the full moon might make the foam later rise too high or too fast, too eager, they said. Chocolate needs modesty, apparently. You scoop the beans off the comel once they've darkened to a rich mahogany, placing them into a wide stone bowl to cool. You blow on them gently. The skins flake off like brittle leaves. You pinch a few and roll them between your fingers, revealing the warm, oily nibs inside. These are what you'll grind into the paste, the soul of your drink. As you peel, crack, and sort, you fall into a trance. The fire crackles. Someone's dog trots by and pauses to sniff. You toss it a burnt husk, which it accepts with the dignified air of someone who understands cuisine. The stars blink into the sky above, one by one, like old friends arriving late to a party they weren't sure they were invited to. Once you've husked enough beans, you set them aside and rise slowly, stretching your back. Your knees crack like polite percussion instruments. You don't mind. This process takes a toll, sure, but it gives more than it takes. You carry the roasted beans into the kitchen hut and place them near the metate, the heavy grinding stone that's been used for generations. You'll grind them tomorrow at dawn when the world's still cool and quiet. For now, you let your fingers run across the stone's surface, worn smooth by time and touch. You think of the hands that came before yours. Mothers, aunts, elders with patience deeper than wells, shaping cacao into comfort celebration, sometimes even seduction. You glance at the beans one more time, nestled in their bowl like precious stones. You know they're not just ingredients, they're stories. Each one has been plucked, fermented, dried, roasted, all without machines, all without shortcuts. That kind of attention leaves a mark. Outside, the fires faded to embers glowing like sleepy eyes. The wind picks up slightly, lifting the scent of roasted cacao into the night. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays a child, practicing maybe, or a spirit checking in. You lie back on a woven mat, the scent of chocolate still clinging to your skin and clothes. You close your eyes. You don't dream of candy bars or cafes. You dream of flames, slow-motion hands, and the way a bean cracks open when it's ready to become something more. That's the thing about Aztec chocolate. It's never just about taste. It's about time, pressure, stillness. Every step you take is part of a ritual that says, we don't rush joy. And honestly, you believe it. Dawn doesn't so much break as exhale. You wake to the sound of early birds arguing with trees and a gentle breeze teasing through the doorway. The air is still cool, but warmer than yesterday's dawn. The smell of last night's roasting lingers on your hands, faint and toasty. You stretch slowly like you're giving yourself permission to exist one vertebra at a time. Today, you grind. Not in the TikTok rise and grind way, though maybe you'd get a few followers for the sheer aesthetic of it. No, this is actual grinding. Elbow grease. Stone on stone. You walk to the metate, the ancient curved slab of volcanic rock resting on 3 squat legs, and place it on the floor in the soft morning light. Its surface is cool and familiar. If it could talk, it would probably sigh and say, "Finally." Beside it sits the mano, a stone rolling pin, smooth and heavy. You lift it once to feel its weight, then set it down and reach for the roasted cacao beans. They sit in a wide clay bowl, dark and fragrant, almost smug with potential. You select a handful and scatter them across the metate with the soft clatter of pebbles. And then you begin. The motion is ancient and soothing press roll pull back. The mano rocks forward with a dull scrape flattening the beans into fragments. They crack open with a sound like old paper. Tiny bits jump free and tumble onto the floor. You don't mind. That's just cacao being dramatic. As you keep grinding, the friction warms the stone and the crushed beans begin to clump together into a coarse paste. Oils emerge, turning the texture sticky. You pause, wipe your brow with your sleeve, and take a breath. This is a workout, sure, but it's also meditation. Push, pull, scrape, repeat. If the Aztecs had fitness influencers, this would have been their go-to. Mainstream historians agree the metate was essential to Aztec households, especially for cacao and maize. But what they still debate is just how personalized these stones were. Some scholars claim that metates were handed down through generations and carried subtle blessings. Others think each family tuned theirs with secret grooves and carvings to get just the right grind. You wonder if yours has a sweet spot, a cacao chakra, if you will. A quirky fringe theory says the cacao paste could act like a mood mirror. The smoother and silkier it turned, the better your spiritual alignment. So, if your paste came out clumpy and dry, uh-oh. Time to light some incense and apologize to your ancestors. You add a bit more roasted cacao and resume grinding. The scent now, oh, it's glorious. Rich, nutty, with a smoky undertone that smells like how you imagine ancient gods would host brunch. You lean closer and inhale. Your eyes flutter shut for a second. This isn't just food prep, it's aromatherapy. After a good while, your shoulders are starting to protest, you lift the mano and check your progress. The paste is thick and velvety, dark brown with tiny flecks of husk. You run a finger through it, watching the way it clings and swirls. It's not glossy yet, but it's close. You keep going. As you grind, you start to hum. Nothing specific, just a sleepy tune from somewhere deep in your bones. Maybe it's a melody passed down. Maybe your great someone hummed it too while preparing cacao for a festival or a storm. By now, the paste is practically singing. It glistens slightly in the morning light, and the scent is louder than ever. If your neighbors aren't awake yet, they're definitely dreaming about dessert. You stop to rest, sitting back on your heels, and take a sip of water. Your hands are coated in chocolate paste, sticky and satisfying. You lick a finger, then pretend you didn't. It's not sweet, not yet, but there's something bold about it, like it's telling your tongue, hang tight. It gets better. You gather the paste into a small bowl using a flat wooden scraper. It resists a little thick and clingy, but it's ready for the next step, mixing. You know, the real magic isn't just the beans, it's what gets added to them. Chili, honey, maize, flowers, maybe even dried mushrooms if you're feeling brave. But that's for later. For now, you breathe in, let the weight of the morning settle over your shoulders, and take a moment to appreciate what you've done. This isn't instant gratification. It's hours of work guided by instinct, by rhythm, by muscle memory etched into stone. Your hands ache a little. Your arms are smudged with brown streaks. You feel calm in a way only deliberate effort can create. This is what people forget in the age of one-click cravings, that flavor begins with patience. You carry the bowl of paste to the prep bench and lay out the ingredients you'll mix in soon. Dried vanilla pods, ground chili, roasted maize flour, bits of dried magnolia petals. You're not making hot cocoa. You're crafting a drink that once powered warriors and priests, that stood in for money and medicine, that whispered to the gods and made emperors sigh. The Aztecs didn't just drink cacao. They believed it had a soul. And when you grind it by hand like this, when the scent fills your lungs and the rhythm steadies your pulse, you start to believe it too. One last press of the mano. One last swirl of the paste. You smile and say aloud, "That'll do." And the métate. If you listen close enough, it almost seems to purr. You pick up the bowl of fresh cacao paste, still warm from the friction of grinding, and cradle it like a secret. The weight is familiar now, like holding a sleepy cat that just happens to smell like roasted dreams. The next step, mixing. Not with a spoon, and certainly not in a blender. You're doing this the Aztec way, methodical, deliberate, full of flavor and occasional flair. You set the bowl down gently on a woven mat and eye your ingredients. There's a proud little lineup waiting for their moment: dried chili powder, the color of burnt sun-ground maize, flour so fine it floats like dust, golden honey, stiff from cool mornings, and fragrant vanilla that looks like it escaped from a poem. You lean in and sniff each one, savoring the individual notes before they join the orchestra. Mainstream historians are pretty aligned on this one. The Aztecs had several common chocolate drink recipes with regional and ceremonial variations. Some were spicy and bitter, meant to energize. Others leaned floral and frothy for banquets or romantic gestures. There were even blends infused with hallucinogens, but tonight let's maybe keep those off the menu. You like your dreams trippy, not terrifying. First comes the maize. You add a small scoop to the cacao paste and begin folding it in with a flat wooden spatula. The texture thickens, almost like clay. It adds body heft, like you're anchoring the chocolate in the real world. Without it, the drink would be too oily, too slick. Maize is the grounding friend in the group chat. Quiet, dependable, always online. You drizzle in a touch of water just enough to loosen the mix. You stir slowly, rhythmically, like you're tracing the outline of a spell. The paste softens, becoming more pourable, but still holds shape like thick paint. You imagine a mural painted in cacao and maize warriors and jaguars dancing across the temple wall. Probably wouldn't last long in the rain, but what a way to decorate a kitchen. Next, you add the chili. Not a lot, just enough to catch the back of your throat with a gentle hiss. The red powder folds into the dark paste like fire hiding in shadow. You taste it on the tip of your finger. There's heat, yes, but also brightness like a sunrise showing up uninvited. It's the kind of flavor that taps you on the shoulder and whispers, "Stay awake." The Aztecs weren't shy with spice. They believed in flavors that demanded your attention. Cacao, after all, wasn't dessert, it was sustenance. Medicine, ceremony. You wouldn't pair it with marshmallows. You'd pair it with war paint and a declaration. Now comes the honey. You scoop it from a ceramic jar with a carved wooden spoon, thick and golden like liquid thyme. It trails into the mixture with a slow stretch, then disappears under your stirring hand. The sweetness doesn't mask the bitterness, it complements it. Like a bedtime story with one slightly haunted chapter. Here's a fringe fact you'll love. Some Aztec households believed that stirring honey into chocolate without saying a prayer could cause lazy foam, a weak, lifeless froth that shamed the drink. So, you whisper something under your breath. Not quite a prayer. Not quite a joke. Just a murmured promise that you're taking this seriously. Your foam deserves effort. Finally, you scrape in the seeds of a dried vanilla pod, black specks flecking the surface like stars scattered across obsidian. The scent sharpens, deepens. Sweet floral, slightly woodsy. If cacao is the heartbeat, vanilla is the breath. Light and calm and absolutely irresistible. Historians still argue whether vanilla was added only for nobles or if commoners had access too. Some say it was too rare for everyday use. Others point to market records that suggest it was traded often, possibly even grown in household gardens. You like to think everyone got at least a pinch, if only on special days. With everything combined, you stir again. The paste is glossy now and thick as dream mud. It smells like fire-earth spice and something a little holy. You dip your fingers in and taste. The flavor explodes not like candy, but like meaning. It's layered. Bitter from the cacao, hot from the chili, sweet from the honey, softened by the maize, lifted by the vanilla. And there it is, that deep exhale, that sigh that only happens when things come together just right. You transfer the mixture into a wide-mouthed clay pitcher with care. The paste doesn't rush, it flows. Slowly, thickly, like it knows what comes next and it's not in a hurry. You set the pitcher aside and begin heating fresh water over a low flame, just enough to warm but never boil. Boiling would scald the cacao, make it angry. Nobody wants an angry chocolate god. You can already see it in your mind, the mixing dance, the pouring, the foam. But not yet. Right now, you sit for a moment, hands sticky face flushed from the effort. You lean back against the wall and close your eyes. Outside, the village is waking. Somewhere, a flute plays again. Somewhere, someone's starting their own cacao grind. You smile. You've taken beans from sun to stone, fire to paste, and now to this a dark, fragrant concoction older than coffee shops and stronger than your average motivational poster. This isn't just a drink. It's a potion made of weather and work and wonder. Tomorrow you'll froth it until it rises like cloud tops. You'll sip it under stars and pretend just for a moment that you are royalty. But for now, you let it rest. Because the calmest chocolate doesn't come from speed, it comes from surrender. You sit cross-legged on the woven mat, the clay pitcher of rich cacao blend nestled at your side, still warm but patient. It doesn't tug at your sleeve like a cup of coffee might. It waits like it knows this moment is sacred, and it is because now comes the frothing. Not with a whisk. Not with a stick blender that makes a sound like an annoyed lawnmower. You're going old-school Aztec style with a molinillo, a carved wooden frothing stick light in your hand and heavy in tradition. You pick it up and examine its ridged head. The grooves are worn smooth from generations of swirling. It almost purrs when you spin it between your palms. There's something deeply satisfying about holding a tool that was designed for one purpose, making your chocolate dance. You pour a portion of the cacao mixture into a wide ceramic bowl shallow enough to let the surface breathe deep enough to catch the foam. The scent rises again, floral, spicy, bittersweet. You roll your shoulders, plant your elbows, and gently insert the molinillo. And then you start to spin. Slowly at first, just a curious twirl. The wood catches the liquid, stirring lazy ripples across the surface. You roll it faster. Your palms work in a steady rhythm, forward and back, like you're warming them over the fire of flavor itself. The ridges chatter softly against the bowl, making a sound like rain on old wood. Little bubbles appear, gather, and multiply. The top begins to bloom with pale brown froth, delicate but determined. It's happening. Mainstream historians agree that frothing cacao was one of the most essential parts of Aztec chocolate preparation. The foam wasn't garnish, it was glory. The higher the foam, the better the drink. It showed skill, respect, and intention. There were even Calmest or noble schools where young elite students were taught how to perfect their froth. You can imagine the pressure. Sorry, your royal chocolate lacks loft. Embarrassing. But here's the thing, this part feels joyful. You're not measuring, not timing. Just listening to the slosh and whisper of wooden grooves slicing through ancient liquid. You swirl, you pause. You watch the way the foam builds in gentle waves, how it clings and crests and holds. Fringe theory time one, you can't help but smile at some believe cacao foam held oracular power. That diviners could read the patterns in the froth the way others read tea leaves or bird entrails. A certain swirl meant good harvest. A sudden bubble meant love was coming. A collapsed center, time to duck. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread belief or just ritual fringe fun, but either way it's compelling. You squint down at your own froth, searching for signs. One bit looks like a feather, another like a mountain. Then something that might be a taco if you tilt your head. You decide this means good sleep, soft dreams, and maybe some mild indigestion if you overdo it. The foam climbs. Not in a dramatic lava lamp way. More like sea foam slowly lifting over black rocks. It thickens at the top, forming a creamy cap that catches the light. You lift the molinillo carefully, and let the excess drip back in the ribbon of cacao swirling like ink in water. You give one last whirl for good measure, then pour the frothed drink back into the clay pitcher. The foam holds. You nod, satisfied. It's beautiful. Almost too pretty to drink. Almost. Now comes a choice. Traditionally, this chocolate was consumed cool or lukewarm. Heating it too much would kill the flavors and flatten the foam. But a little warmth, just enough to open it up, that's fair game. So you place the pitcher near the fire, Not in it, just close enough to share some of the heat. As it warms, you prepare a serving cup, a painted vessel with red spirals and jaguar paws curling around the rim. You run your fingers over the pattern. It's smooth and slightly chipped. Well loved, like everything else in your setup. You think about how many people held this cup before you. How many mouths sipped from its edge and whispered about the flavor. Here's a lesser-known tidbit: some Aztec nobles added flower petals or colored foams to the top of their cacao for special ceremonies. Blue corn blossoms, crushed marigold, even powdered obsidian for sparkle. Chocolate as performance art. You kind of get it. You sprinkle a few dried magnolia petals on top, mostly for the aesthetic. They curl gently into the foam, resting like little sails. A visual whisper. The pitcher is ready. You pour, slowly letting the drink arc into the cup like a lazy waterfall. The foam follows smooth and glossy, sitting proud on top. You set the pitcher down and hold the cup in both hands. It's warm, not hot. Heavy, not burdensome. You lift it to your lips and sip. The foam is the first thing you taste, light and airy, with the faint crunch of chili sugar and maize. Then the drink itself, bold, complex, a little bitter, a little sweet. The flavors roll out in waves, each one deeper than the last. There's heat, but not fire. Sweetness, but not sugar rush. It's balanced, grounded, sacred. And in that moment, time softens. You're not just drinking, you're participating. You've ground the beans mixed the blend, frothed the foam, and now you sip centuries. You close your eyes and sit in the warmth of it all. Outside, the wind nudges the doorway. Inside, your breath slows. You imagine being an Aztec scribe or a temple cook or just some sleepy farmer lucky enough to know the method. You imagine gifting this drink to someone special, maybe someone about to walk into a ceremony or a dream or your heart. One more sip. The foam tickles your lip. You don't wipe it. You've done it. You've frothed the storm into a cloud. You cradle the empty cup, its rim kissed with the last whisper of foam. The chocolate lingers on your tongue like an afterthought that refuses to fade, and a cozy heaviness starts to settle in your limbs. You could stop here. You really could. But if you've come this far, there's one more thing you have to try. Because, as every cacao devotee knows, it's not just about drinking, it's about sharing. You set the cup down with reverence, then glance at the tall, narrow-gourd bowls tucked away in the corner. These are Zicali drinking vessels made from dried and hollowed calabash gourds, often polished smooth and etched with geometric designs. Not every household had ceramic cups. Gourds were more common, more accessible, and, let's be honest, way more stylish for an earthy cacao aesthetic. You pick one up, trace the incised patterns with your thumb. It smells faintly nutty and sweet like dry leaves on a warm floor. Holding it feels different than holding a clay cup. It's lighter, more delicate, but still sturdy like it remembers being part of a tree. Back in the day, you wouldn't drink alone. Chocolate was a social ritual. You'd pour it for guests, offer it to elders, maybe even serve it to someone you were trying to impress. Chocolate wasn't just food, it was a statement. Here, taste this. Know that I took the time. Know that I value you. You pour the remaining frothed drink into the Zicali, careful not to collapse the foam. It fits snugly, the surface glistening. You consider decorating it maybe with a dab of crushed hibiscus or a sprinkle of toasted amaranth, but you decide against it. Simplicity in this moment feels more generous. And then you imagine the guest. Could be someone from your village, an old friend arriving dusty from the road. Could be a young warrior anxious before a rite of passage. Or maybe it's someone like you, curious, modern, and tired of fast things. Someone craving something made with care. You offer them the Zicali, both hands forward. You make eye contact. You nod, not a big nod, just enough. They take it from you. And together, silently, you sip. There's a certain magic in drinking at the same pace. It's like matching your breathing to someone else's. The silence feels full, not awkward. The flavor deepens somehow more than just cacao, more than chili or maize. It tastes like connection. Mainstream historians agree cacao was a diplomatic tool. Rulers exchanged it. Traders used it in negotiations. Brides and grooms sipped it during wedding ceremonies. Sharing chocolate was serious business. You weren't just hydrating. You were sealing something invisible. And here comes a charmingly bizarre fact. Some Aztec matchmakers allegedly observed how a person held their cacao cup as a sign of character. Too tight, controlling. Too loose, flighty. Tipping the foam before the first sip, emotional disaster. You glance at your grip, smile, and adjust slightly, just in case someone's watching. As your imaginary guest finishes their drink, they hand the Zicali back with both hands as tradition demands. You accept it with a slight bow, not overly formal, just enough to say, "Yeah, that was real." Then comes the cleanup. You return to your mat and begin rinsing the vessels with warm water, no soap. Soap would spoil the scent. These cups, these bowls, they want to keep the memory. The water runs brown and cloudy, not dirty, just full of stories. You dry them with a woven cloth, soft with age. You catch yourself humming. Maybe it's a tune you made up. Or maybe it's something ancient passed down through breath and bone, a melody that only rises when chocolate and silence meet. It loops lazily like the swirl of foam in the cup. Comforting, slightly off-key. Yours. Historians still argue whether cacao preparation was the domain of women, men, or both. Some murals show noble women mixing and frothing. Others depict male priests handling the ritual drink during temple ceremonies. The truth probably depended on the moment. A banquet, likely women. A sacrifice, likely priests. A sleepy evening with just one guest and a quiet hum. That's you. You pause to stoke the fire, which is now low and friendly. Shadows stretch long on the floor. The light flickers on your skin, warm and sleepy. The scent of chocolate still hangs in the air, rich and grounding. You sit legs tucked beneath you and just breathe. You think about what it means to make something slowly, about how long it takes to grind, to mix, to froth, to share. You think about how different that is from today's just add water culture. And yet there's a hunger for it, for the ritual, for the choice to do something the long way even when you don't have to. You don't rush this reflection. There's nowhere to go, nothing left on the to-do list. The bowls are clean. The fire is kind. The guest has gone, or maybe was never here. You can't tell. Doesn't matter. Because what was here, what is still here, is the quiet knowledge that you did something beautifully impractical. You ground beans by hand. You balanced flavors. You summoned foam. You shared. And even if no one was watching, even if your guest was imaginary, you still honored the process. And the process in turn has honored you. You lie back on the mat, hands behind your head, the scent of cacao curling in the corners of the room like a lullaby. The sky outside deepens from indigo to charcoal. Somewhere a bird sings, just once, then stops. You smile again, that soft kind of smile that doesn't need an audience. You feel full, not stuffed, just full, of warmth, of stillness, of something ancient and lovely and entirely yours. The stars are out now faint, but certain scattered like crushed salt over deep blue velvet. You lie there a while longer, letting your body remember what it's like to do nothing. But eventually, with the fire low and the night deepening, you rise. Not in a rush. Just a natural tilt forward like a leaf finally giving in to the wind. Tonight isn't just about making chocolate. It's about keeping it. Because if you've gone to the trouble of preparing it by hand, grinding, mixing, frothing, sharing, you're definitely not letting the rest spoil. You walk slowly over to the tall lidded vessel tucked behind your preparation mat. It's made of dark, porous clay, its sides etched with swirling patterns that feel like river currents under your fingertips. This is your storage jar. Not for hoarding, let's not be dramatic, but for preserving. The Aztecs didn't have refrigeration, but they had cleverness. They understood airflow sun cycles, the art of cool darkness. You remove the lid and peer inside. It's clean and dry dusted with ground corn husk to absorb extra moisture. You pour the remaining cacao blend in carefully. It glugs softly like it's saying thank you. Mainstream historians note that cacao is often stored in multiple forms: whole dried beans, roasted nibs, or fully mixed paste. This blend thickened slightly with maize stores well for several days. You could reheat it later, or blend it into gruel, or even use it in ceremony. In a way, you've just stocked your own mini temple pantry. You seal the vessel with its lid, pressing gently until it fits snug. The faint scent of cacao escapes bittersweet and grounding. You wipe your hands on your tunic and sit again, knees drawn up back, resting against the storage jar. It feels warm from your touch. Or maybe it's always been warm. And here's a fringe detail that slips between the cracks of official history. Some say cacao blends were occasionally buried. Yes, buried in shallow clay-lined pits to age like wine. The flavors mellowed, the bitterness softened, and supposedly the dreams after drinking aged cacao were more vivid. Historians still argue whether this was widespread practice or myth-making, but the imagery is hard to ignore. Imagine unearthing your own dream drink, steeped in earth and time. You take a moment to close your eyes and imagine it. You a month from now kneeling in the same soft dirt, digging gently to reveal a cool clay vessel. The top sealed. The blend thick and rich with mystery. You bring it to your nose and suddenly the dreams feel real. The ancestors speak clearer. The foam whispers your name. But for now, tonight's blend will rest above ground. Still sacred. Still yours. You open a small side pouch and pull out a few dried cacao beans just to feel them again. Their shells are rough and matte like they've weathered something. You crack one open between your fingers. The nib inside is darker than you expect, almost purple. You chew it slowly. Bitter. Intense. Pure. It's funny, after all the frothing and mixing, this raw little bite feels like a secret handshake with the past. You eat another just because. Then, because you're in this deep. Now you reach for a sheet of bark paper and a stub of charcoal. Not to draw something complex, just a few lines. A spiral. A bowl. A cup with foam overflowing. Maybe, if you're bold, a little jaguar. Or a feather. You're not an artist, but no one is grading this. It's just you leaving breadcrumbs for future you. You fold the paper gently and tuck it beneath the storage jar like a blessing. Or a reminder. Or a joke. Hey, remember that time we made chocolate from scratch and didn't totally ruin it? Yeah, that time. Your hand lingers on the clay a little longer. You whisper something not in words, just in rhythm. Maybe a thank you. Maybe a promise. The moon has risen higher, casting long, silvery lines across the floor. The fire has nearly burned out glowing embers, clicking quietly like insects chatting in sleep. You scoop a bit of ash over the flame, not to smother it, just to ease it down. A gentle good night. And, speaking of good night, you stretch out your arms, spine popping, body softening. The chocolate has worked its way through you, not like caffeine, not sharp and edgy. More like a lullaby sung by bones. You don't feel hyper. You feel hollowed out in the best way. Light, ready to dream. You step outside for a moment, bare feet brushing cool dirt. The air smells like stone and moonlight and faint cacao. You look up. The stars are louder now. The night feels kind. One last strange tidbit before bed. It's been said that the god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent himself, gifted cacao to humankind. Not fire, not weapons, chocolate. That was his sacred offering, his rebellion against the other gods who thought humans didn't deserve it. You look up at the stars and wonder if that story's true. What else are we quietly worthy of? You don't answer the question. You just take a breath, head back inside and curl into your blanket. The mat is soft beneath you. The clay vessels sit in their quiet corners. The fire dreams its own slow dream. And you, chocolate still on your tongue, drift. Not quickly. Not all at once, but like someone being pulled gently by the tide away from the world of noise into something warm and deep and laced with ancient flavor. The night curls tighter around your little space like a cat finding its warmest shape. You lie still breathing with the faint hush of coals and the memory of cacao on your lips. But even as your body flirts with sleep, your mind wanders to what comes next. Because if you're serious about embracing the slowest, calmest methods of Aztec chocolate preparation, then there's no avoiding the next phase, fermentation. Yeah, not the sexiest word. But don't roll your eyes just yet. You sit up slowly, pulling your blanket around your shoulders like a cape. Fermentation is where the magic actually starts. Everything you've tasted so far, the deep bitterness, the soft tang, the whisper of umami. It all begins not in a cup, but in a pile of cacao beans sweating under banana leaves. You stretch your arms and pad barefoot across the cool floor to your little fermentation basket. It's tucked beside the wall lined with woven reed and padded with soft leaves. You uncover it gently, like opening a secret. Inside, a small pile of cacao beans glistens. They're warm, not hot, just warm like they're alive. Because they are. Mainstream historians confirm the Aztecs, though not the first to ferment cacao, practiced some version of the process likely learned from the Olmecs or Maya before them. Whether they fully understood the microbial science is still debated, but they clearly grasped that something important happened when the beans sat in their own juices for a few days. The beans you're looking at now are in day 3 of the process. The outer pulp, once sticky and white like lychee flesh, has liquefied and sunk slightly, releasing a soft acidic scent that tickles your nose like underripe pineapple. You stir the beans slowly, careful not to break them. A little heat escapes. Tiny bubbles fizz at the base. Fermentation in this case isn't just rot, it's refinement. It's like a party for invisible guests, yeasts, bacteria, enzymes. They break things down. They whisper chemical lullabies to each other. They rearrange flavor molecules like decorators in a sacred temple. And you're just the quiet host, making sure the door stays open and the leaves stay tucked. You tilt your head, listening. Not for sounds there aren't any you can hear, but for the shift in scent. There it is. That first hint of warm bread, like something is baking deep in the pile. That's your cue. The yeast is winning the first round. Give it a day or two more, and the whole thing will turn richer, darker, fuller. You stir once more, then gently tuck the leaves back over the beans. Banana leaves ideally, or maize husks if you're improvising. Their job isn't just insulation, they offer microflora help control humidity and keep the ferment respectful. This isn't a frat party. It's a quiet initiation. And here's your fringe fact for the night. Some sources suggest that fermented cacao was sometimes dried not by the sun alone, but over gentle smoke. Not to cook it, just to infuse it. Smoke from copal or mesquite added layers of scent that clung to the nibs like memory perfume. Historians still argue whether this was regular practice or a sacred one reserved for ritual batches, but either way, the idea lingers. You imagine your beans steeped in the gentle ghost of incense, smoke, and smile. You wash your hands in the basin nearby. Not just because they're sticky, but because this part of the process always feels like a crossing. Before fermentation, you're working with fruit. After it, you're shaping magic. You sit back and pull your blanket tighter, watching steam rise from your rinsed hands in the chill. You let your mind wander again, this time to the market stalls of Tenochtitlan. Rows upon rows of merchants with baskets of dried cacao beans, each pile slightly different. Some darker, some glossier. Some with that telltale smell of over-fermentation, sharp vinegary, and a little desperate. You picture yourself there haggling gently, trading maize cakes or obsidian blades for a half-kilo of prime beans. Not too wet, not too dry, just right. There's a rhythm to it. Smell, squeeze, listen. The good sellers don't shout, they just wait for you to notice. The best beans barely need to be touched, they announce themselves with scent alone. You lean back against the wall, eyelids heavy. The fire's out now completely. The air cool but not cold. A perfect night for slow fermentation and slower dreams. And in case you're wondering, yes, people probably did dream about cacao. There are fragments of stories scattered in the codices and oral traditions that hint at cacao dreams. Visions of jaguar gods stirring froth in obsidian bowls, lovers feeding each other bittersweet paste by moonlight, warriors being reborn with cacao eyes and maize-sweetened hearts. Are these literal dreams metaphors? You'll never know. But tonight, with the beans warm and the room quiet, you're allowed to believe. You lie down again, the smell of fermentation rising faintly in the air, earthy, sweet, sour, oddly comforting. Like the world is busy in your absence. Like something is transforming without needing your constant supervision. You trust it. And you trust yourself. Because there's a confidence that comes with fermentation, a surrender to slowness, an agreement to wait. You've entered the part of the process where you don't control so much as witness. You let nature speak its strange language, and you choose to listen. And that might be the calmest thing of all. You wake before dawn. Not with urgency, there's no alarm, no rooster screaming from a rooftop. Just that gentle body knowing, the kind you get after enough nights close to the earth. The air is still blue-dark. The world holds its breath in that soft pause before the sun thinks about rising. And somewhere in the back of your mind, like a sleepy whisper, you remember it's drying day. The beans are ready. You roll out of your blanket and stretch. Your spine crackles like twigs in a cooking fire. You don't rush. You sip a little leftover cacao from a clay cup, reheated by swishing it around with your hands. It's not quite warm, but it's alive with flavor, fermented and thick. Almost sour in that good, complex way that lets you know the transformation is complete. The beans are waiting. Outside, a woven mat has been unfurled on a flat patch of dirt, angled just enough to catch the slow rise of sunlight. You approach your fermentation basket like a midwife. You peel back the layers of leaf wrapping. The scent is stronger now, deep, tangy, nutty. It grabs your nose like sourdough starter, and wood smoke had a baby. You stir once more, lifting a handful of slick, glossy beans. They feel different, firmer, less fruit, more muscle. You carry them gently to the mat and begin to spread them out one handful at a time in slow rows. You're not just dumping them, you're placing them with intention, like arranging stars. Historically, Aztec drying methods were practical, elegant, and deeply tied to rhythm. Sunlight did most of the work. Morning sun was soft, drying surface moisture. Midday sun was the muscle pulling deeper dampness out. And the afternoon breeze, when it came, helped everything settle. You sit cross-legged by the mat, flipping each bean between your fingers. You check for the right color. The perfect bean isn't shiny anymore. It's gone matte, a soft, dusty brown like an old leather journal. The smell changes too. Less bright, more grounded, the kind of smell that suggests you could grind this into something that might actually change your day. You stay like that for hours, occasionally rising to stir the beans. You hum to yourself, sometimes a little off-key. The sun rises behind you, not fast, not slow, just consistent. And here's your offbeat trivia treat for the day. Some records, rare ones hidden in fringe corners of Mesoamerican lore, mention cacao, drying accompanied by song. Not performance, not festival, just quiet, steady singing. A repetitive chant, often one note or a phrase whispered to keep rhythm. Some scholars scoff, others lean in. Historians still argue whether these drying songs were superstition or subtle science. Maybe the resonance encouraged even airflow or calmed the handler. But you hum anyway, because it feels right. As the day warms, you shade the beans with a reed mat, leaving the edges exposed. This isn't a tanning session, it's a ritual of patience. You take breaks. You eat flat maize bread with mashed avocado and lime. You sip water from a gourd. And you check every so often that the beans are changing. They do. By late afternoon, they've gone from wet and clumpy to firm and clicky. You tap one against your tooth. It's hard, but not brittle. You try to crack it between your fingers. The shell splits like a cicada's back, revealing a darker interior. It's beautiful, like a tiny, edible geode. You pause, then, lying back on the dirt arms stretched out beside you. The world smells like sun-baked beans and warm clay. Your body hums, not from movement, but from alignment. You've been part of something natural, slow, ancient. And just when you think you're done, you remember the final step in drying the rattle test. You scoop a few beans into a clay bowl and shake it gently beside your ear. A proper rattle means the nib has shrunk just enough from the shell. Not so much it's hollow, just enough to tell you I'm ready. You smile. It's a weird test, but a satisfying one, like a secret handshake with time. And here's where you get a little philosophical, because the drying phase is the closest cacao gets to rest. Fermentation is a party. Roasting is fire. Grinding is work. But drying is lying on your back in the sun, letting things settle. It's the pause between chapters, the exhale. You sit with that for a while, your body stretched beside the beans like you're sunbathing together. You close your eyes just for a second and almost drift into a dream where every cacao bean is a tiny world with its own weather system. Some are raining, some are dry. One is a thunderstorm with cinnamon lightning. You wake to a breeze and the whisper of a passing bird. Maybe it's checking on your progress. Maybe it's laughing at the way you drool slightly in sleep. Either way, the beans are dry. You gather them into a wide-mouthed clay jar, shaking off any debris. A few shells crumble away. That's okay. You'll winnow them later, separating shell from nib with practiced flicks and gentle breaths. For now, they go back inside. You carry the jar like something sacred. And it is. It's the result of hours of silence, waiting, turning, listening. You set it down in the same spot where the fermented paste had rested a few nights ago. Full circle. And then, because you've earned it, you pull out a single bean and crunch it between your teeth. The flavor is sharper now. Not bitter exactly, but intense. Like it knows what it is. You chew it slowly, letting the oils coat your tongue. It's not sweet, not even close. But it doesn't need to be. Because you're tasting progress. You lean against the wall, watching the sun slide lower your body, vibrating with sun-warmed slowness. And, as the last of the light disappears, you think drying cacao isn't just about reducing moisture. It's about reducing everything noise, urgency, distraction, until all that's left is pure, honest presence. It's darker now. That hushed, velvet dark kind of night that seems to absorb even the crackle of your own breath. The stars press in close, almost nosy, as if they've been watching your cacao project unfold and want to see what comes next. And you. You're not just watching anymore. You're roasting. This is the turning point. You sit cross-legged in front of a small clay comel, a flat griddle balanced over a low fire. The flames are shy tonight. Not loud or aggressive, just gently licking the underside of the comel like they're trying not to wake the neighbors. Which is good, because this is a quiet moment. A precise one. And you're going to need all your senses awake. Roasting isn't brute force. It's not about incinerating the beans into charcoal. It's about coaxing, massaging, knowing when to let heat in and when to back off. And if that sounds oddly like a relationship, well, you're not wrong. You reach into your clay jar and select the first handful of dried cacao beans. They clatter softly in your palm lighter now, each one with its own brittle confidence. You spread them gently across the warm comel, making sure no bean is stacked on another. They need their space. Everyone deserves room to evolve, right? Almost immediately, you hear it. That first tiny crackle. A whisper of sound like old paper folding in on itself. The beans are reacting, not just to heat, but to the memory of their journey fermentation sun time. They start to puff slightly. Some crack open just a sliver. You lean in, careful not to get too close and catch the scent. It's glorious. Roasting cacao smells nothing like chocolate bars, at least not at first. It's earthy, smoky, a little sour, like burning bark mixed with the breath of rain on dust. There's also a fleeting note of something almost meaty, umami-like, deep and savory, like broth made by ancestors. And here's a mainstream historical fact to chew on while your beans roast. The Aztecs didn't always roast cacao the way we do now. But evidence suggests they did toast it lightly over flame, or coals before grinding. Not to change the flavor as much as to make the shells brittle and the nibs easier to release. Function over flavor. But let's not pretend they didn't notice the taste improving too. You stir the beans with a wooden paddle, watching the color deepen. From light brown to copper, from copper to something darker. You don't want them black, that's ruin. You want them mahogany, maybe. Warm chestnut, the exact shade of a sunset falling into volcanic ash. Now, for the quirky tidbit of tonight's roast, in some regions people believed the sound of cacao beans cracking could ward off bad energy. That the popping was like little spirits being released, shaking off negativity. You like that idea. Each little crackle a ghost leaving the party. A tension dissolving. A layer of old worry being roasted right out of the bean. You lean back slightly and watch the steam rise. It carries stories. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs had a standardized roast level or if it was more of a feel-it-in-your-bones approach. Probably the latter. After all, they didn't have thermometers or timers. They had eyes, noses, fingers, and intuition honed by years of practice. You flick a bean off the comal and bite into it. Too soft, needs more time. You try another. It crunches perfectly and melts into bitter smooth magic across your tongue. That's the spot. One by one you start removing the beans. Not all at once. That's the trick. Some are done earlier than others, like students in a classroom. You don't hold anyone back just because the loudest ones aren't ready yet. You spread the roasted beans on a reed mat to cool. The scent lingers on your hands, nutty smoky, a little primal. You hold them to your nose and smile. You smell like progress, like transformation, like someone who knows how to roast a bean without burning the future. The fire crackles softly, sending up sparks like fireflies. You let the last few embers fade naturally. There's no reason to rush them. You're learning that nothing about this process invites urgency. Everything is about presence, precision, and respect. And while you sit in that space, here's something beautiful to consider. Somewhere in the same century, you're imagining a young Aztec apprentice, maybe not so different from you, was also sitting cross-legged in front of a fire. Also turning beans. Also sniffing the air and guessing at flavor by instinct. Maybe they got scolded for under-roasting. Maybe they had to start over. Maybe they got it perfect and a high priest took one sip and said, This is worthy. You imagine them there across time. Both of you roasting under the same moon, asking the same question. Is it ready? Eventually, the fire dies. Your roasted beans sit cool and dark beside you, transformed, but not finished. Not yet. Tomorrow, you'll winnow them, grind them, and begin shaping them into something drinkable. Something meaningful. Something ancient. But for now, you stretch out on the mat again, letting the warmth of the comal fade beneath your spine. You inhale deeply. The scent of roasted cacao hangs in the air like incense. Your body sighs. The work is slow, the process imperfect, the outcome still unknown. But you're here, fully. And that's what counts. You wake before the sun again, though this time there's a new weight to your movement. Not heaviness from tired limbs. No, it's more like anticipation. Like that feeling when you're about to peel the paper off a long-awaited gift. Only your gift is wrapped in brittle cacao shells, and the unwrapping process involves a little more elbow grease. Today is winnowing day. You carry the roasted beans outside, nestled in their woven basket like prized artifacts. They rattle softly with each step, a dry, satisfying sound, like someone walking across gravel with purpose. You settle under the same mesquite tree, its limbs casting sleepy shadows across your workspace. You begin by rubbing the beans between your palms, gently cracking the shells. It's not glamorous work. tiny shards fly up, and you cough once when a bit of hull lands on your tongue, definitely not the tastiest part. But it's meditative, rhythmic. The beans split easily now, their roasted coats surrendering to pressure like old armor falling away. With your fingers you separate the lighter shells from the denser nibs. This is where the magic hides, in those dense, dark fragments that look like pebbles, but hold the future flavor of chocolate in every cell. The shell flakes drift downward like dusty confetti as you swirl the mixture in a wide clay bowl. You blow gently over the top. A breeze helps. The lighter husks flutter up and away, caught on the wind. Some cling to your hair. One somehow sticks to your eyebrow. You look ridiculous, but only to the birds, and they're not judging. This method of winnowing by hand with air and motion was the go-to practice for the Aztecs and many of their Mesoamerican neighbors. Machines hadn't been invented yet, and even if they had, there's something honest about separating beans with nothing but fingers and breath. It's a sensory dance, the feel of shell from nib. The sound of scatter, the tiny satisfaction when you see the bowl fill with only the good stuff. And here's your quirky tidbit for today. Among certain Aztec households, the discarded cacao shells weren't wasted. Some were used as kindling, others scattered in ceremonial gardens as offerings to the earth. There's even some fringe theory, yes, seriously, that cacao shells were brewed into a mild tea to aid digestion. Was it tasty? Debatable. Was it believed to open the inner gates of clarity, maybe? Historians still argue whether that was a genuine practice or the kind of post-conquest speculation European chroniclers scribbled in margins just to sound mystical. Either way, you try it, just a pinch of shell steeped in warm water. The result? Well, it tastes like the ghost of chocolate and a hint of smoke, but it's oddly calming. You'll give it a solid 6.5 out of 10 on the ancient beverage curiosity scale. With the last few beans winnowed, you're left with a bowl of clean cacao nibs. They're small, broken, imperfect, shaped by heat and time, but together they feel substantial, like potential, like raw ideas waiting for form. You toast a few more just lightly on the comal to test something. What if slightly double-roasted nibs create deeper complexity? You don't know, but it smells incredible. You crunch one between your teeth. The flavor has shifted richer, a little sweeter on the back end, with something almost floral blooming behind the bitterness. The sun climbs higher, casting sharp light across your workspace. You squint your hands, dusty and dark with cacao fragments. And then, finally, you look down at your bowl and think, This is what people have waited centuries to taste. Not candy, not syrup, not the diluted sweetened versions you find in foil wrappers today, but this raw cacao in its purest, realest form. There's a strange moment of pride, like you've joined an ancient club, like if a time portal opened and an Aztec cacao priest stepped out, saw your bowl, and gave you a solemn nod of approval. You'd nod back, equally solemn, then maybe ruin the whole vibe with a high five. You gather the winnowed nibs into a larger grinding bowl, a metat, smooth and cool with shallow curves that cradle the future. You run your fingers over the stone, noticing tiny grooves from years of use. You imagine others before you hunched over this same stone, or one just like it grinding nibs into paste under the watchful eyes of elders and gods. You're not grinding yet, though. That comes next. Today is just about preparing, knowing, appreciating the tactile nature of the work. You press a single nib into your thumb and feel it resist, then crumble. You catch the scent again, deeper, now more complex than before. Not just chocolate, history. You cover the metate with a woven cloth and sit back on your heels staring at the dust motes dancing through beams of sun. Your hands ache a little. Your back whispers complaints. But your heart, that thing is soaring, because you're getting closer. One cracked shell at a time, you've crossed another threshold. You've taken something wild and fermented, tamed it through fire, and separated it by breath and patience into its finest form. Now what remains is essence, concentrated, honest, ready, and you, sitting cross-legged in a field of whispering husks and lingering aroma, are ready too. The metate waits. It's just a stone, you tell yourself, but that's like calling the ocean a puddle. This is where transformation happens. Real, undeniable alchemy. The kind that can't be undone once it begins. You stretch your arms with a soft grunt, wipe your palms on your tunic, and place the first scoop of cacao nibs into the shallow curve of the grinding stone. The mano, the smooth, heavy roller, feels cool in your grip. It's awkward at first. Your wrists try to steer it like a modern rolling pin, but the metate demands a rhythm you haven't yet learned. You adjust press, lean forward slightly. The nibs crunch beneath stone, a dry crumble followed by something stickier. They're not powdery, not at all. The oils inside them release, quickly bonding with one another like old friends who don't bother with small talk. As the paste begins to form, the scent rises. Stronger than before. No longer just smoky or bitter, now it's deep, velvet rich. There's a bitterness, yes, but it's sophisticated. Like an aged espresso shot with secrets. You work the paste in slow, steady circles. It resists at first, reluctant to smooth out, but then it yields slightly. You find your groove. The motion is full body now, a sway from your shoulders down through your hips. It's almost hypnotic. You could do this for hours. You will do this for hours. Here's your mainstream historical fact. While you grind, the Aztecs often ground cacao with maize or chili to stretch the product or enhance flavor. Sometimes other spices were added, like allspice or vanilla orchid pods, though these were rare and treasured. The grinding was nearly always done by hand, often by women in the household. Not just a chore, but a ritual. A moment of power passed through generations. You pause to gather the paste with a carved spatula, scrape it gently into a bowl, and admire the texture. It's thick, silken. There's a sheen to it, like it knows how important it is. It glistens in the sun like melted obsidian. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some Aztecs believed cacao paste had mild aphrodisiac properties, especially when mixed with certain flowers or honey. There were even coded love poems passed through cups of chocolate. You grind a little slower at that thought. Who knew this bowl of brown goo could be romantic? Now let's turn up the heat. Literally. You place the paste back on the metate, this time, with the stone warmed by a few sun-baked rocks you'd left sitting earlier. Not blazing hot, just enough to soften the oils and help the paste emulsify even more. The smell intensifies. It's intoxicating. Someone walking by would swear you were making food for gods. Historians still argue whether the metate's heat was intentional or simply a side effect of constant use. Was it warmed by fire or body heat? Or was the temperature just a happy accident? There's no consensus, but you feel certain the warmth matters. The paste turns smoother, easier to spread. It clings to itself. It becomes. You add a little liquid, just a touch. Water. Room temperature. Maybe a sprinkle of ground maize, too. The texture shifts again. Now it's more like batter. More fluid. More alive. You scoop a bit onto your fingertip and taste it. It's, whoa, not sweet, not what modern taste buds would expect, but bold, bitter, roasty. There's a long finish, almost metallic, but not in a bad way, just unfamiliar, like tasting history itself. You remember something you heard once, probably in a documentary narrated by a guy with a voice like polished walnut chocolate, only became sweet after colonization. Before that, it was warriors' food. You believe it now. This stuff doesn't beg to be loved. It demands respect. You grind another batch, then another. Your arms protest. Your shoulders roll with fatigue, but you push through. The work is slow, the result small, but the reward monumental. When you finally stop, your bowl is half full, well, half glorious. It's thick, glistening, almost molten, like lava that learned restraint. You hold it up to the light and turn it slowly. No grit, no lumps, just velvety readiness. You could stop here, call it a day. But instead, you scoop a small amount into a second bowl and begin to experiment. You add a whisper of chili powder, just a pinch. You stir it in with reverence. Then another small scoop, this one with crushed dried flowers. You're not even sure what kind, but they smell like dreams. The kind you half remember when you wake up and immediately want back. Your final test batch, just cacao and a sprinkle of ground vanilla pod. It smells so rich you half expect it to start reciting poetry. You arrange the bowls like a painter laying out colors. Each one a shade of cacao, a mood, a message. Not for a feast, not for trade, just for taste, for learning, for connection. You sit back, wiped out and wide awake. The sky above is bruising into evening. Birds shout lazily in the trees, their songs bouncing between branches like last calls before dark. You stare down at the cacao paste, thick, smooth, fragrant, and realize something wild: you've made it. This is chocolate Aztec style. Not tempered, not molded, but powerful. Real. Sacred. You think of the hands before yours, the metates worn down by time, the generations of grinders, stirrers, roasters. You're part of them now. Not just a tourist of time, but a practitioner. And in the silence of dusk, surrounded by bowls of ancient flavor, you smile. Evening descends, gently stretching shadows across your cacao-slicked workspace. The warmth of the sun lingers in the stone beneath you, a kind of earthy reassurance that the day's labor was worth it. You flex your fingers, sore-stained, maybe slightly trembling from the rhythm of grinding, and eye your lineup of bowls. Now comes the part most people rush, but not you. Tonight is about the pour. It starts with a vessel. You choose one carved from gourd, its surface painted with symbols worn soft by time. Lightweight, porous, oddly elegant. You scoop in the freshly ground cacao paste just enough to coat the bottom. Then you add a stream of cool water, not too much, and stir it slowly with a whisk made of bound reeds. The paste resists, then yields swirling into suspension. And now you lift the bowl. Holding it high, you tilt the edge, and the cacao water mixture begins to fall. Straight down? Of course not. That would be boring. You pour it with a flick of the wrist from high above into a second vessel sitting on the ground. The liquid arcs through the air like a dark ribbon splashing into the bowl below, with a satisfying plop. A foamy top forms instantly, frothy, airy, with tiny chocolate bubbles crowding the rim like eager festival goers. This isn't a party trick. This is the trick. In the Aztec world, foam wasn't just decoration. It was the essence, the treasure, the part you slurped first and offered to gods. The foam symbolized breath, air, even life. And the higher you poured, the better the bubbles. It's a bit like latte art if your barista had biceps and the patience of a monk. And here's a historical gem: Aztec nobility were sometimes served their chocolate already foamed, prepped in elaborate chambers by skilled attendants. It wasn't just about taste, it was a performance. Drinkable prestige. A ritual in every arc of pour and every tilt of cup. You pour again. Higher this time. The stream thins, flutters slightly in the air, then hits the bowl with a splash that paints your ankle in chocolate droplets. Nice. You'll call it an exfoliant. You repeat the process, back and forth, bowl to bowl. Each time, the foam grows more stable, thicker, even sculptural. You want to name it. Maybe Cloud of the Ancestors or Cocoa Beard of Destiny. Too much, maybe. But the moment feels worthy of dramatics. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some sources claim certain cacao ceremonies included chanting during the pour, specific rhythms, or words meant to awaken the chocolate's spirit. Whether it's true or just poetic imagination, you hum a little tune as you pour, just in case. Now, one of the bowls is full, foamy, fragrant, luxurious. You lift it, hands steady, and bring it to your lips. You sip only the top layer first. Light, bitter, airy. The bubbles melt, instantly vanishing like dreams you forget by lunch. Then a deeper sip, richer now with body and boldness. No sugar, no dairy, just cacao water and ancestral magic. It's not good by modern standards. It's real. Historians still argue whether this foam was ever flavored, or if purity was the rule. Some glyphs show hints of spices, while others depict plain, unadorned chocolate passed solemnly between hands. Was it reserved for ceremony, or did warriors drink it daily before battle? No agreement yet, and that uncertainty adds a delicious mystery to every sip. You take another drink. It coats your tongue, leaves a pleasant bitterness at the back of your throat. Your body reacts with a little jolt, not caffeine exactly, but theobromine. A gentle buzz. Alertness without jitter. Like your brain just stepped out of a hot spring and said, "Okay, I'm ready for the universe now." You experiment. In the next bowl, you mix in chili again. This time more boldly. The pour creates foam with a faint red hue. It's got kick, a wake-up slap from centuries ago. You cough a little, then grin. Spicy breath of the gods, you whisper to yourself. You try the vanilla-flowered one next. Softer. Romantic. The foam here settles like snow. You imagine a moonlit ritual cacao shared between lovers or partners during a festival. It's almost too tender for words. You sip it slowly, like it might dissolve if you move too fast. One bowl remains. The mystery blend, your wild card. You forgot what you added. It might have been wild honey, or maybe that mystery leaf you found by the river. You pour it high and fast, let the foam build recklessly. It tastes like nostalgia and risk. Not perfect, but real. That's the best part. This isn't about chasing perfection. It's about understanding how cacao was treated, transformed, elevated. It was medicine, sustenance, gift, and weapon. A diplomatic tool, a sacred offering, and always it needed foam. You pour one more time just for fun. The bowl overflows slightly. Chocolate drips down the gourd side and onto your lap. You don't care. You feel like a chocolatier shaman hybrid, standing in the afterglow of something ancient and wildly important. The sun has long since dipped below the horizon. The métate cools at your side. Your fingers are stained, your bowls are emptying, and your belly hums with warmth and the strange buzz of theobromine. You gather your things slowly, almost reluctantly. Because this step, the pouring, the foaming, the first true taste, this is the moment chocolate goes from ingredient to experience. You whisper thanks to the stone, to the tree that bore the fruit. to the hands across time who poured before you. And, as you lick a stray drop from your thumb, you're already dreaming of the next batch. The bowls are still warm when you stack them beside the metate, carefully like placing sleeping animals back in their nests. Night presses down with a slow hush, wrapping you in a soft, indigo calm. You stretch, let your breath settle, and begin to tidy the space not out of duty, but reverence. Because now, after the foam and the pour, comes the wait. Not for you, for the chocolate. This batch, well, parts of it won't be sipped immediately. Some will be stored, transformed again. That's right. Cacao wasn't always drunk fresh. Sometimes the paste was saved aged, even fermented subtly over time. A kind of mellowing. A way to deepen flavor or ensure supply for future rituals or trade. So you lay out broad banana leaves, their waxy skin cool and fragrant. With a carved wooden spatula, you scoop the remaining cacao paste into thin discs, almost like rustic pancakes, and press them flat. They're dense, rich, sticky. You fold the leaves over gently, tucking the chocolate inside like a secret. No plastic wrap, no labels, just plants and patience. And here's your mainstream historical fact: cacao was commonly stored as pressed cakes or tablets, often wrapped in plant matter. These could be kept for weeks, even months, and rehydrated with hot water to make a quick drink. Traders carried them across great distances. Soldiers tucked them away for energy on long marches. Portable chocolate before Hershey's even had a glimmer of a dream. As you work, the quiet wraps tighter around you. Somewhere in the dark, a frog trills. You glance at the small woven basket nearby your storage cache. Into it, you place the wrapped cacao discs one by one like filing chapters of a story you're not done reading yet. You pause. Because if you're being honest, you kind of want to label them. Spicy one, vanilla-ish, that mystery leaf I hope wasn't poison. But the Aztecs didn't use Post-its. They relied on memory, on scent, on knowing. So you take a sniff of each bundle before tucking it away. One smells like smoke and heat, another like crushed petals. The last one, yeah, still a mystery. Now, here's your quirky fringe tidbit. In certain Aztec households, cacao discs were hidden in walls or buried in clay pots as emergency reserves, essentially the ancient equivalent of chocolate doomsday prepping. Some even suggest that elite families had cacao caches for use in political leverage or social exchanges. Imagine showing up to a neighbor's house with a chocolate disc instead of a bottle of wine. Way cooler. You crouch, dig a small hole with your hands near a shaded stone wall, and place a wrapped disc inside. Not because you need to, but because it feels right. Like leaving behind a note to yourself in another timeline. A chocolate time capsule. Historians still argue whether these storage methods altered the chocolate's chemistry over time. Did the flavor deepen? Did mold sneak in and get interpreted as umami? Was fermentation intentional or accidental? No definitive answers yet, but you kind of hope someone's still out there experimenting. You wipe your hands on your tunic and sit back staring at the metate. Still stained with streaks of paste, little dried speckles clinging like freckles. You trace your finger along one of the grooves. That stone's seen hundreds of batches, maybe thousands. Your day with it is just one breath in a very long exhale. The breeze shifts, rustling the leaves overhead. You stand, stretch again, and begin to clean. First, the metate. You pour a small cup of water across its surface, rubbing it gently with the same care you might use to wash a sleeping baby dragon. The cacao lifts away reluctantly, like it doesn't want to leave. You let the water run into the earth. The smell rises one last time, rich and ancient, and faintly like breakfast. Next, the bowls. You rinse them with warm water, swirl, pour, repeat. Each rinse a small ceremony, not scrubbing, just honoring. Then your hands. You dip them in the last of the clean water, rub them together slowly, watching the brown tint swirl and fade like ink in milk. Your palms feel smoother now, almost conditioned. Turns out, chocolate isn't just for eating. It's the Aztec version of skincare, minus the eye-watering price tag. As the fire pit flickers low, you gather your materials. The reed whisk, still damp with foam. The spatula worn smooth. The basket of chocolate bundles now hidden in their leafy cocoons. And you smile. Because all of this, the roasting, the grinding, the foaming, the storing, it wasn't just about making something tasty. It was about slowing down, paying attention, touching the past with your fingertips, and breathing in a flavor that somehow still lingers even after centuries. You tilt your head back and gaze at the stars. They're out now, bold and bright. A jaguar constellation prowls low on the horizon. You sip the last cool dregs of cacao from a bowl and feel a deep sense of calm settle into your chest. No sugar rush, no crash, just the gentle pulse of theobromine and a belly full of meaning. There's something comforting about knowing you've created something the exact same way it was done hundreds of years ago. No shortcuts, no substitutions, just earth, fire, water, and time. You give the matat one last pat like a thank you and whisper a promise to return. Soon. Maybe with different spices, maybe with friends, or maybe just to sit and smell the chocolate air again. You leave the space as it was, no trace, just cooled stone and buried sweetness and a soft humming in the trees. Because chocolate at its most sacred isn't about indulgence, it's about memory. You wake to the soft crackle of morning, the jungle air still thick with dew, and the faint scent of roasted cacao drifting lazily from your clothes. The sun hasn't yet burned away the mist, and the world feels suspended like the pause between a breath in and a breath out. Time to move again, but gently. Today, your focus shifts from preparation to celebration. Because in the Aztec world, cacao wasn't just fuel or ritual, it was ceremony status connection. To drink it was one thing. To serve it was an art, and you, lucky, sleepy soul, are now the unofficial chocolate steward of the village. You gather the bundles you stored yesterday, now slightly firmer from their rest, their aromas deeper and more complex. You inhale one, it smells like it's been dreaming overnight and woke up fluent in poetry. You unwrap each disc with care and place them in a wide obsidian bowl. There's a ceremony happening at midday, a birth welcoming, actually, and you've been asked to prepare the cacao offering. No pressure, but also some pressure. Because cacao at an Aztec celebration wasn't just nice to have, it was essential. Births, weddings, warrior promotions, harvest blessings. It was the drink that closed deals and opened hearts. Not bringing your A game was basically like showing up to a wedding reception with a juice box. So you start again. The metate greets you like an old friend, and the rhythm returns, push, scrape, fold, press. The paste forms easily now, as if yesterday's grind gave today's blend a head start. You add water, careful again, and begin the pour. Higher this time. You want the foam to wow. To say, a future leader was born today, and we've honored that with bubbles that reach the gods. Foam forms beautifully. Thick, luxurious. Your earlier practice paid off. You mix in a gentle dose of honey and vanilla for warmth, and a dash of chili, not enough to bite, just to wake up the flavor. This isn't warrior fuel. It's a cradle toast. As the brew settles, you prep the serving bowls, each one painted with gentle blue swirls, symbols of water and fertility. The symbolism is heavy here, and you're into it. It's like setting out champagne flutes, only you hand-wash them with river water and ancestral gratitude. Here's your mainstream historical fact. At major Aztec celebrations, chocolate was often served by women, especially noble ones. The act of presenting the cacao was sacred, an extension of hospitality and reverence. It wasn't uncommon for the most important guests to be served first, and to be handed the frothy bowl with both hands and a slight bow. You imagine your own hands doing this. Not just handing over a drink, but presenting a moment. Of course, you're not above adding your own flair. You garnish each bowl with a tiny float of flower petal, probably anachronistic. But you tell yourself the gods appreciate good presentation. Now comes the procession. You wrap the bowls in soft cloth, arrange them in a reed tray, and carry them toward the ceremony space, an open circle ringed by smooth stones and garlanded with hanging vines. The new mother sits near the center, cradling the bundle of life swaddled in sun-colored cloth. People gather slowly. Quiet laughter, footsteps on dry leaves. There's music, too, light flute-like, weaving through the trees like birdsong. The atmosphere is reverent, but not stiff. Joy hums under everything subtle and sincere. And then the cacao. You step forward. You present the first bowl to the new parents. Both receive it with steady hands, and before they drink, they lift the foam toward the sky for a moment. Not a prayer exactly, more like a nod. A spiritual fist bump. They sip. Smiles bloom. You move around the circle, offering each bowl like it's a treasure, because it is. And you watch as people take their first sips, eyebrows, rising lips, smiling heads, nodding in quiet appreciation. The drink does its work. Soothes nerves. Sparks conversation. Roots everyone to the moment. Here's your quirky fringe tidbit. Some Aztec ceremonies reportedly included cacao readings, kind of like tea leaf divination, but with foam. Supposedly, the way the bubbles clustered or dissolved could predict a baby's fortune or reflect a guest's spirit. You squint at one bowl. The foam forms what could easily be interpreted as a jaguar paw, or maybe just a melting flower. Either way, it feels cosmic. Historians still argue whether these readings were widespread practice or limited to certain priestly classes. Some say the whole thing was more metaphor than method, like reading personality from handwriting. Others argue the foam's behavior in combination with chants or incense held genuine predictive value. You're open to the idea, especially if it means people respected their beverages more. The ceremony moves on. Blessings are spoken, gifts exchanged, songs sung. You stay seated under a flowering tree, sipping the final bowl. The chocolate's gone a little cool, but the flavors are somehow rounder now. Softer, more reflective, like it knows it's part of something bigger. Someone beside you hums a tune. Someone else laughs. A baby hiccups in the shade. And you sit there in the midst of it all, realizing something kind of wonderful, the quiet power of shared chocolate. Not as candy, not as comfort food, but as a thread, a connector, a story in liquid form. You glance down at your empty bowl and think maybe next time you'll try a touch of cinnamon, or rose petal, or maybe not. Maybe you'll just repeat this moment exactly as it is again and again until the recipe is part of your bones. Because this is what cacao is for. Not just making, but marking. A life. A bond. A moment in time. And tonight, when the ceremony ends and the stars return and You're back beside your sleepy metate. You'll remember the way they smiled, the way the foam held shape, the way it felt to give something ancient and watch it come alive again right there in their hands. Later that evening, long after the last laugh has faded and the bowls are washed clean and stacked neatly, you linger by the hearth, poking the fire just enough to keep it purring. There's still a tiny bit of cacao paste, left just enough for one final experiment before the night folds in completely. Because today you celebrated. Tomorrow you teach. That's right. You've been asked to share what you know, which, given the incredible luck of your recent cacao crash course, is sort of hilarious and sort of terrifying. But you're ready. Or at least ready enough to wing it with confidence and excessive enthusiasm. You cradle the bowl of paste and stir in warm water with the care of someone coaxing a story from a shy friend. This batch is different. You're testing a theory. A low and slow brew thicker than normal infused with ground maize and a whisper of smoked salt from the coast. It's your midnight version, a rich, almost savory cacao meant to warm the belly and anchor the mind. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Cacao drinks in the Aztec world weren't one recipe fits all. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of variations, each crafted with regional flair or tailored to the occasion. Some included corn to make them more filling. Some were thinned down and sweetened for children. And some, particularly the elite blends, were spiked with flowers, mushrooms, or fermented fruit for, let's call it, enhanced perspective. You take a sip. Oh, it's good. It's bold and earthy with just a tiny edge of smoke at the back of your tongue. You nod to no one in particular, whisper, "Not bad," and raise your bowl to the stars. A quiet toast to all the mistakes that led to this near perfection. Then you prep for tomorrow's lesson. You lay out the basics: cacao beans still unroasted, dried chilies, a pinch of achiote, fragrant vanilla pods. You even set aside 2 extra bowls unfired clay with little imperfections in the rims, perfect for new hands learning the rhythm of a pour. You also jot some mental notes because, let's face it, there's no chalkboard where you're going. You'll need to remember to explain why you roast the beans slowly, why you never rush the grinding, and how the foam isn't just a party trick. It's the soul of the drink. Then a quirky fringe tidbit flickers into your mind. There are unverified reports, half oral history, half old scribe gossip, that in certain rare households, cacao instruction included secret songs, literal songs, sung while roasting or grinding to keep time and pass along techniques. Some say the foam formed better when the tune was just right. Others argue that it was more about creating focus and harmony in the process. Either way, your brain decides you're absolutely composing your own cacao grinding song by sunrise. Maybe with a chorus that includes "Stir it slow, don't let it blow foam like clouds, not lava flow." Catchy, right? Historians still argue whether cacao education was formalized in any consistent way. Some suggest it was passed mother to daughter, or through apprenticeships in noble kitchens. Others think certain temples held training ceremonies for cacao preparation tied to calendar rituals. There's no real consensus, which makes it easier for you to improvise wildly tomorrow without fear of being historically inaccurate. You pack up your tools and ingredients in woven pouches and tie them together with a thin length of fiber cord. Simple, compact, elegant. The kind of kit a wandering chocolatier might carry. A real-life cacao bard. Your eyelids grow heavier, but your thoughts drift lazily to how you'll begin your lesson. You picture young faces, maybe wide-eyed and slightly skeptical. They'll assume they're just learning to make a drink, but you'll show them it's a ritual. a dance, a living thing passed from hand to hand. You'll start with the bean. Let them hold it. Let them feel the weight of it. You'll tell them it traveled hundreds of miles by canoe and foot through mountain paths, and rivers bartered with obsidian blades and feathers and copper bells, that this humble seed was once more valuable than gold, and still might be depending on how you use it. Then you'll demonstrate the roast. Let them smell the shift, the raw bitterness blooming into warmth and richness. You'll have them crush the beans gently, slowly by hand, so they understand how the nib hides inside the shell like a hidden prize. Next comes the metate. You'll guide them through the grinding, not just the motion, but the posture. You'll teach them to settle into it like a rhythm, that it's not just about muscle, it's about intent. By the time they get to the pour, their arms will ache, and that's good. That's part of it. And then you'll let them taste. You won't fix their recipe. You'll let them fail once or twice. Add too much water. Over foam. Under spice. You'll smile through it all, because that's where the magic lives, in the tiny mistakes, the unbalanced bowls, the eyes that light up anyway, because they've made something from nothing. The drink doesn't have to be perfect. The moment does. You lean back on your mat arms, crossed behind your head, staring at the fire. Embers glow like little red stars. You take another sip of your salty midnight brew, and imagine your students swirling their own bowls, giggling, whispering, adjusting. You imagine one of them turning to you asking, "Is this how the Aztecs did it?" And you'll say, "Kind of." And then you'll wink. Because part of being a keeper of old things is knowing when to honor them and when to bend the rules just enough to keep them alive. The fire pops gently. You pull a woven blanket over your shoulders and close your eyes. Tomorrow you teach. Tonight you dream of chocolate songs. Your dreams, perhaps unsurprisingly, are thick and velvety. Not quite liquid, not quite mist, somewhere between melted chocolate and clouds. There's a song threading through, and someone, maybe you, maybe not, is humming while grinding cacao into a sunrise. When morning finally peeks in, you blink back the haze and stretch arms stiff but satisfied. Today you teach. You gather your kit, which now feels less like tools and more like a magician's pouch. Each item has weight, purpose, presence. The cacao beans jostle softly in their pouch like coins of potential. The metate, though heavy, sits balanced on your shoulder. The bowls clink gently, whispering of foam not yet born. And you, the sleepy cacao whisperer, are off to share your secrets. Your students await in a clearing near the river chosen for its natural light and steady breeze. It's early, and they're still groggy young faces pinched with curiosity and impatience. You remember being like that once. Maybe still are. You kneel, lay everything out slowly, deliberately. The hush spreads curiosity, pushing aside yawns. The trick you've decided is to start with the absurd. You hold up a single cacao bean. This, you announce, was once worth more than gold. People paid taxes with it. People got married over it. There are stories of entire market deals sealed with one handful of these. A few eyes widen. Someone giggles. One kid pokes a bean like it might bite. Here's your mainstream historical fact: Aztecs used cacao beans as currency, legit money. You could buy a tomato with 3 beans a turkey hen for 100, and yes, certain questionable adult services for 8 to 10. You politely omit the last detail. PG-13 and all. You lead them step by step. First, the roast. They lean in close, sniffing the shift from grassy to toasty, from faintly sour to richly earthy. Then comes shelling. Fingers fumbling a few beans skitter away into the grass. You don't scold, It's part of the chaos. Grinding follows, and here the class divides those who rush and those who listen. You show them the technique. Again, grind forward, fold back, slow and steady. The stone answers only to patience. Sweat appears. One kid complains about arm ache. You smile gently. Good. That means you're doing it right. As the paste forms, you shift into lecture mode well as much as you ever do. You talk about how no two households made chocolate the same way. How some used honey, others maguey sap. How certain families had their own secret recipes passed down and protected like treasure maps. Here's your quirky fringe tidbit. Some whispered accounts describe cacao brews used in secret councils, or romantic negotiations infused with rare herbs to open hearts or cloud judgments. Whether these were magical potions or just well-spiced aphrodisiacs is up for debate, but it gives your lesson an edge of mystery. Now, the water. They watch closely. You pour high-confident, coaxing the foam. A few try to mimic your movement. One bowl erupts in a waterfall. Another has more bubbles than liquid. You let them laugh. Foam is fickle, you say. But she rewards focus. They ask about flavors. Can they add chili? Yes. Can they use vanilla? Yes. Can they mix both? Absolutely. You hand out tiny pinches of ingredients and encourage each pair to blend their own version. Soon, the air smells like a chocolate apothecary. The river gurgles nearby. Birds chirp overhead like tiny percussionists. It's messy and marvelous. Historians still argue whether Aztec cacao making was viewed as art or obligation. Was it a sacred craft reserved for ceremonies, or just a daily grind? Literally, evidence suggests it was both. Cacao could elevate a feast or simply nourish a tired worker. Like fire or water, it shaped itself to the context. You watch as your students sip their chaotic concoctions. Some faces light up with pride, others scrunch in disgust. One boy, eyes watering from too much chili gulps river water with theatrical flair. They pass bowls around, comparing, critiquing, complimenting. You hear yours tastes like flowers, and mine is spicy but sweet, and I think I added soap by mistake. You laugh, and they laugh with you. Then a surprise. One of the students, quiet until now, approaches and offers you a bowl. It smells intriguing, smoky, warm. You sip. The balance is shocking. A little bitter, yes, but layered. The kind of drink that feels like it's been alive for generations. You raise an eyebrow. They shrug. I just copied you. You nod, pretending not to feel ridiculously proud. And then you tell them the last truth, that making cacao this way isn't just about ingredients. It's about presence. About listening to the paste as it softens. About watching the foam rise and fall like breath. About noticing the heat of your hands, the rhythm of your movement, the story in the steam. You gather the bowls and rinse them in the river. The students help splashing each other, still buzzing from their work. You hand out the remaining beans as souvenirs. Not candy, not snacks, seeds, potential. As they leave, chattering and plotting their next batch, one turns back and asks, "Do you think the gods really liked chocolate?" You smile. I think chocolate helped people feel like gods. And with that, your first and possibly finest chocolate class ends. You head back toward camp with a few beans tucked behind your ear and paste still under your fingernails. Your feet are tired. Your shoulders ache. But your heart is full. You taught something ancient and it bloomed. You wake up the next day with a quiet ache in your shoulders, the kind that doesn't ask for relief, just acknowledgement. It's the kind of soreness that says you did something real. You smile at that thought, stretch out slowly, and hear your bones creak like old wood. Your voice is gravelly, your fingers stained dark from yesterday's cacao lesson, and you wouldn't change a thing. The village is already stirring. Somewhere, someone is grinding corn for tortillas, and the soft rhythm of the metate echoes like a welcome drumbeat. You rub your eyes, splash your face with cool water from a clay jug, and begin preparing your supplies. Not for another class, no today, you're going out. There's talk of a trader's caravan passing nearby, carrying coastal goods, salt, smoked fish, jaguar pelts, and maybe rare cacao from the edge of the empire. Not the average kind either. The stuff with a hint of fermented fruit or flecks of white cacao, the albino beans that pop up unpredictably stubborn and mythic. The trader's trail is long, winding, and full of distractions. You pass through groves where vanilla vines twist up tree trunks like lazy snakes. A bird flits past with feathers so bright you blink twice. You pass a group of children playing a game that involves throwing pebbles into bowls, a proto-beanbag toss basically. But they cheer with the full-bodied joy of a New Year's countdown. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Aztec cacao wasn't only cultivated in one place. While the best beans came from the southern rainforests, cacao moved all across the empire via Pochteca, the professional merchant class. These traders weren't just salespeople. They were spies, diplomats, and adventurers, fluent in languages and skilled in negotiation. Their journeys were dangerous, but their cargo cacao above all was too valuable to ignore. You imagine being one of them, your pouch slung over your shoulder, navigating mountain passes and river crossings, knowing your load was basically a traveling treasure chest. You wonder if they whispered to their beans to keep them safe. You finally reach the clearing where the traders are camped, their goods displayed on woven mats and hanging from twisted poles. Smoke from roasting maize mingles with the scent of dried herbs and wet earth. You wander slowly, scanning the wares, jaguar teeth, obsidian knives, carved flutes, spiced powders. But your eyes are locked on the cacao. There they are. The pods are smaller than you expected, wrinkled and heavy colors ranging from orange to deep purple. Some have been split open to reveal their sticky white pulp and hidden seeds. You're drawn to one in particular, pale and luminous. Could it be one of the rare albino types? Maybe. Maybe not. You ask the trader, who raises one eyebrow and grins like a cat, quirky fringe tidbit incoming. There's a story mostly dismissed by scholars that the albino cacao bean doesn't just taste different, it listens. Supposedly, if you whisper your intentions to it before grinding, the flavor changes to reflect your mood. Love, sweet. Grief, bitter. Joy, bright like citrus. The scientific community would like a word, but the story sticks. You buy the pod, and you whisper to it. Curious, you say just loud enough for the pod to hear. You leave with your prize wrapped in a bit of cloth tied with a sprig of episode. As you make your way home, you feel the weight of the pod shift with each step, as if it's rearranging itself based on your thoughts. Historians still argue whether rare cacao types like this were selectively cultivated or simply luck of the crop. Some believe the Aztecs knew how to hybridize intentionally, while others argue they simply harvested what nature offered and gave the anomalies spiritual significance. Either way, you know you're not just bringing home a bean. You're bringing a story. Back at your camp, the sun is lower now, casting that perfect kind of light, the golden sleepy kind, that makes everything look a little too beautiful to be real. You settle down with your tools, unwrapping the pod slowly. You talk to it. Not full sentences, just murmurs like greetings to a shy animal. Then you begin the ritual. Roast low like always. The pod cracks open gently, revealing those pale seeds now drying slightly in the heat. They smell unexpected. Less bitter, more floral. You grind, carefully, slowly. The paste takes longer to form, and when it does, it's smoother, more pliable. You don't know if it's your imagination or if the stories were right. You decide to go wild with the mix: vanilla, a drop of fermented honey, crushed marigold petals. You foam it until your arm complains, then pour a generous portion into your favorite bowl, one with a tiny crack near the rim. You sip. The flavor is startling, complex. You taste all the moments of your day, the journey, the laughter, the heat of the afternoon sun, the nervous hope of a student offering you their first brew. It's sweet, yes, but also deep. Like the drink itself is pausing between sips, asking you questions. You laugh. Not a big laugh, just a small one. Because somehow the drink is right. You make a second bowl, pour it carefully, and set it beside you. For the gods. For the pod. Maybe just for the air. You don't need a reason. That night you dream again, but this time it's different. You're in a hall filled with stone tables and glowing braziers. Spirits walk past in feathered cloaks, nodding respectfully. One hands you a bowl. Another corrects your pouring angle. You're not the teacher anymore. You're the student again. And it feels perfect. You wake up before dawn full of ideas. Maybe it's time to try fermenting your own beans. Maybe you'll write a poem to the foam. Maybe you'll paint cacao pods on your wall. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll find someone else to teach. Because knowledge like cacao isn't meant to sit still. It's meant to be ground down, heated up, poured high, and passed along. The days grow quieter now. Your hands remember the weight of the metate, the gentle press of stone against stone, the slow grind that feels like breathing. The fire's glow softens earlier each evening, and you find yourself savoring the stillness between each moment like the space between notes in a lullaby. You decide to take one last journey, not to chase rare beans or practice your teaching, but to simply sit and be. You wander to a nearby clearing where the cacao trees grow wild, their leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. The pods hang low, swollen with promise-dappled sunlight, playing over their rough skin. You brush your fingers over one, feeling the cool texture, the faint fuzz, the slow pulse of life inside. It's humbling. There's a mainstream historical fact here, something you remind yourself: the Aztecs didn't just drink cacao, they revered it. It was sacred, a divine gift from the gods. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was said to have gifted cacao to humanity. This was no ordinary beverage. It was imbued with power, status, and spirit. Every sip connected you to the world, to ancestors, to the earth itself. But then, a quirky lighter note: some stories tell of Aztec cacao being used as a cosmetic. Think of it as the original chocolate face mask. Rich in antioxidants, they'd mix ground cacao with oils and flowers to soothe the skin and scent the air. So, next time you think about chocolate, maybe imagine yourself glowing with ancient cacao glamour. Crocodile dung sunscreen who... You chuckle quietly to yourself. Historians still argue about the role cacao played beyond its culinary uses. Was it primarily sacred, reserved for priests and nobility? Or was it a beloved, everyday ritual woven into the fabric of life? The truth is probably both. Like most good things, cacao was versatile, fluid, and alive, much like your own experience these past weeks. You sit beneath the canopy and let the breeze cool your skin. You close your eyes imagining the vast network of cacao trees, farmers, merchants, and drinkers stretching across time and space. You feel connected not just to the Aztecs, but to everyone who ever held a cacao bean in their palm and dreamed. You think about your students, the trader with his mysterious albino pods, the firelight dancing on your bowl's cracked rim. You think about the ritual of preparation, the slow dance of grinding and pouring and foaming. How patience and presence made the difference between a simple drink and something almost magical. The sun begins to dip low, painting the sky in muted pinks and purples. You sip a final bowl, smooth and bittersweet. The foam curls at the edges like little clouds ready to drift away. You breathe it all in the taste, the memory, the quiet hum of the earth. Slowly, you lean back against the trunk of the cacao tree, letting your body melt into the warm earth beneath you. Your breath slows, deepens, becoming as steady as the heartbeat of the forest around you. And, as the light fades, you whisper your thanks to the gods, the trees, the ancestors, the cacao itself, for the calm it brings, for the stories it holds, for the journey that never truly ends. You are exactly where you need to be. The night drapes itself gently over the land now soft and dark, inviting you to surrender. Your thoughts grow quiet like the fading embers of a fire, and every breath feels lighter, slower, deeper. The world narrows to the comforting rhythm of your own heartbeat, steady and calm. Let the weight of the day slip away like foam settling on a warm cup of chocolate, dissolving softly into peace. You have traveled far through history, through ritual, through stories woven with care. You have held ancient secrets in your hands and shared them with curious hearts. Now, as your eyes grow heavy and the night wraps around you like a familiar blanket, know that the calm of cacao lingers still gentle, warm, and soothing. Sleep well, friend. Let dreams carry you on sweet currents, and wake refreshed to new stories waiting in the quiet light. Good night.